Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Cleveland State University, Robert Conrad, and the Payne Fund.
Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. My name is Bob Littman and I'm the president of the City Club Board of Directors. I'm pleased to welcome you to the annual City Club Forum where we get together to hear about the progress and improvement and transformation of one of the region's most important assets, the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. As you know, the State of School Speaker is Eric Gordon, the district's Chief Executive Officer. This is Mr. Gordon's sixth State of the City School address, which will be followed by the traditional City of Cleveland question and answer period. The Cleveland schools have been in the news lately for a few reasons. The first, and the one you've probably heard about the most, include a contentious contract negotiation with the Cleveland Teachers Union. The second is the renewal levy that will be on the general election ballot for Cleveland voters this fall. Those of you that have read beyond those headlines may know a few other things about the district. The graduation rates have climbed some 14% in the last 4 years, and that the district has been incrementally climbing up out of the bottom of the state's rankings. Top of mind right now for many of us, though, is the impact of the ballot on the schools. Those of you who attended this event in the past remember in 2013 when Mr. Gordon spoke from the stage of the public auditorium with a digital clock next to him, counting the days, counting the hours, minutes, and seconds until the expiration of the levy that was passed in 2012. That levy was the first levy that was passed in Cleveland in ages, more years than anyone could remember. And renewal of that levy is on the general election ballot. The Plain Dealer's Patrick O'Donnell reminded us last week that back in 2012, Mr. Gordon said, quoting here, "If we're going to ask for a significant levy, we better show results if we're going to ask people to renew that levy." So here we are 4 years later, and it's time to show the results and answer the questions we knew we'd be asking. How much have Mr. Gordon and his educators transformed the schools in 4 years? And is that enough to warrant the renewal of a 15 mil levy? Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends of the City Club, stakeholders of Cleveland Metropolitan Schools, I'm pleased to present you the 2016 State of the Schools Address, Eric S. Gordon, Chief Executive Officer of the Cleveland Metropolitan Schools.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sounds like we're going to try that again to get our sound just right. Good afternoon. Joining me today at our sixth State of the Schools address. A full house in this ballroom is a visual reminder of me and my colleagues of the importance each of you plays in the education as a vital factor in the renaissance we are witnessing in Cleveland. I want to start by just thanking a few people for their help in making this occasion occur today. First, to Dan Malthrop and the City Club staff for hosting the event again this year. Could we please thank the City Club staff for this wonderful venue and this big crowd. To all of the sponsors who are in your program and at your tables, thank you for making it possible for the City Club to host this event here at the brand new Hilton Ballroom so that more of my fellow educators, our student scholars, and their families and caregivers could be with us today. Please thank the sponsors for me as well, our supporters this evening. Before I begin my formal remarks, I also want to recognize several people today for their support and leadership. First, Mayor Frank G. Jackson for his continued strong leadership of our city's education plan, the Cleveland Plan for Transforming Schools. Thank you, Mayor, not only for your work as our city's mayor, but also for your leadership as chair of the Cleveland Transformation Alliance and your simply unwavering devotion to the mission and goals of the Cleveland Plan. Please help me thank Mayor Jackson. I know that also State Senator Senator Williams is with us today. Senator Williams was one of the co-authors of the legislation that has enabled so much that we've been able to do. Thank you also for joining us today. County Executive Armin Budish is here today as well. County Executive has made a significant investment in early childhood education you'll hear a little more about that not only advances the Cleveland Plan, but Cuyahoga County for our earliest learners. Thank you, Executive. Council President Kevin Kelly is also with us today, another strong supporter through the City Council in education, not only in his ward, but across the city, and I'd like to recognize him as well. Thank you. I don't know where he is seated in this big ballroom. And I'm certain that there are other dignitaries that joined today, and I apologize if I've missed you in this overwhelming crowd, but thank you for all of you who are here today. I also want to recognize the Cleveland Board of Education, including the members who are present today. Strong board leadership has played a vital role in the Cleveland Plan journey over the past 4 years. And I'd ask my board members to please stand and be recognized, including Board Chair Denise Link and board members Ann Bingham, Willetta Milam, Robert Hurd, Justin Monday, and Lisa Thomas. Thank you all for your leadership. To the chiefs and senior leadership of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, it is my honor to stand here and represent our work. And I'm so proud to work with such an incredibly talented team of committed leaders, and I'm so grateful for all that you do. And while most of our CMSD educators are at work today in their schools, classrooms, offices, and other work areas, there are a number of our educators here today. So would all CMSD educators in attendance please stand and let us thank you for the role you play in our students' success every day. All of our CMSD educators. I'll be talking more about these heroic men and women in a few moments. I also want to say how grateful I am to the partners of this annual event, the men and women who helped to shape and continue to support the Cleveland Plan. That includes the Greater Cleveland Partnership, the Cleveland Foundation, the George Gunn Foundation, Breakthrough Charter Schools, and our growing charter school colleagues in the Cleveland Education Compact and the Cleveland Teachers Union. These and countless other friends and supporters play a pivotal role in the state of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and I thank each of them today. We can thank them. Thank you. Almost done, I promise. But there's two last important groups. There are a large number of CMSD student scholars here today and scholars from other schools in our region. And I'd ask all the students here to please stand. None of this matters today if not for you. Would all of our students please stand? And above all, we owe our gratitude to the people of Cleveland for their continued faith in CMSD, for their game-changing support through issue 107 and then issue 4, that together did more than any of us could do alone to revitalize not only our schools, but our city and our region. So let's talk about the Cleveland Plan. Over the past 4 years, a lot has been written about the Cleveland Plan. So much, in fact, that I'm often surprised when a colleague sends me a clipping that I didn't even know had been written about the plan. Here's one of my favorite finds from this year, an interesting critique of the plan. It begins by stating, and I quote, "Even more generally and conspicuously than before, the Cleveland Plan, as it has become to be known throughout the country, has attracted public attention. The problem of securing a business-like administration of the business affairs and of keeping the teaching force professionally healthful and strong is a difficult one. Cleveland was the first city in the country to take decisive action in securing a plan of organization which would meet these difficulties. When citizens across Cleveland pulled together to draft the Cleveland Plan 5 years ago, we were in academic emergency, on the verge of financial bankruptcy, and had lost the public's trust. The Cleveland Plan provided a means to secure legislation that could modernize work rules, incentivize charter school relationships, and completely reinvent a school system governed by laws and workplace rules designed for another era. When the Cleveland Plan legislation was proposed, Ohio law, union contracts, and bureaucratic traditions had thwarted every attempt to make changes in staffing, budget allocations, school schedules, calendars, and virtually any other reforms designed to improve student achievement. The Cleveland Plan was driven by knowledge of what was already beginning to work in our own highest performing schools. Investments that had been made between 2006 and 2011 in new and innovative school models enabled us to see the kind of results that were possible in Cleveland with the right tools in place. We learned how much more we could do as a school system when we stopped competing with charter schools and instead partnered with the best of them. Through memorandums of understanding with our teachers' union, we created new work rules in Cleveland and saw improved results in our own schools as well. We were motivated by the gains we were seeing in some schools and determined to expand what was working to all of our schools across the city. This collective mission required the support of Ohio's governor and the bipartisan support of the Ohio House of Representatives and of the Ohio Senate, who saw value in our vision and passed House Bill 525, the legislation that put Cleveland in a position to not simply reform, but transform its school system. CMSD, for the first time, had the legal authority and the responsibility to reinvent public education in Cleveland. We also had the responsibility to convince voters that their support of a $15 million tax levy for 4 years would enable us to prove that the Cleveland Plan was much more than the reform plans of the past, that indeed the Cleveland Plan was the right plan right now. Skeptics understandably asked, why should we believe that this plan is different than the reforms of the past? It was a fair question. The citizens of Cleveland had seen almost as many reform plans as they had seen superintendents and CEOs over those years. In fact, CMSD had 14 superintendents or CEOs in just 35 years. So why should a weary Cleveland public believe that this CEO and this reform plan would be any different? I gave 3 reasons when we went to voters in 2012, and those reasons are every bit as true today. First, we had the benefit of knowing so much more about what was working in school reform than our predecessors had in prior years. Having the opportunity to study what worked in our own system and study cities and school systems that were making real progress gave us firsthand knowledge of what was getting results and what was failing to move achievement. Second, legislation passed in Columbus provided us with new work rules and new flexibilities that none of my predecessors had at their disposal when planning their reform efforts. And third, with the passage of Issue 107, we would also have the resources necessary to invest in our reform plan, something, again, that many of my predecessors just didn't have. What made the Cleveland Plan so different was that with these 3 elements in place, CMSD was positioned to be, for the first time, to not just improve on existing practices, but to remove barriers to improvement strategies that we knew worked, but previously could not implement. As the writer of the Cleveland Plan critique noted, the problem of securing a business-like administration of the business affairs and of keeping the teaching force professionally healthful and strong is a difficult one. Through careful research of what worked in urban school reform, bold legislative action, and the will of its people in the voting booth, Cleveland truly was the first city in the country to take decisive action in securing a plan of organization which could actually take on these difficulties. Our writer continues in his critique by saying, and I quote, "And while this plan has not accomplished all that can be desired, it has worked so successfully that there is no thought in any responsible quarter of abandoning it or of relinquishing any of its essential features." It's true that the Cleveland Plan has not yet accomplished all that it desired. We've not met our goal of tripling the number of students enrolled in high-performing district and charter schools. We've not yet met our goal of eliminating failing schools in our city. But the Cleveland Plan, at its core, was designed to move student achievement. And over the last 4 years, while we still have far to go, student achievement is moving. CMSD students are increasingly ready to compete with students across the state and nation as we steadily move the system that serves them in the right direction. Since implementing the Cleveland Plan, our community has expanded access to high-quality preschool for 4-year-olds in our city by more than 1,200 seats. Data from Pre4Cle, a public-private partnership created by the Cleveland Plan, shows that 80% of the students accessing these high-quality preschool seats are arriving kindergarten ready when they come to school the following fall, compared to only 50% for those who don't have access to a high-quality preschool. And according to a report released by Case Western Reserve University last fall, we know that kids who have attended CMSD preschools are 29% more likely to pass Ohio's 3rd grade reading assessment than those who have not. With recent announced commitments from Cuyahoga County and matching gifts from local business leaders, I am excited to report that we will be able to continue our rapid expansion of this most important Cleveland Plan commitment. As Cleveland's children grow, we have mounting evidence that CMSD is increasingly able to ensure these young students are able to read proficiently by 3rd grade, as measured by Ohio's 3rd grade reading guarantee. In fact, in both of the last 2 years since Ohio implemented the 3rd grade reading guarantee, CMSD has improved 3rd grade reading scores from approximately 31% of students reading at grade level in the fall to more than 85% reading at grade level by the end of the year. We saw these gains despite the fact that the state passing score has increased each year, and even as the state implemented more rigorous reading tests each year as well. Even though evolving state tests in the last 3 years have made it difficult to measure progress in the middle school, CMSD was identified as one of only 3 large urban districts in the nation to show improvement on all 4 subjects of the National Assessment of Educational Progress, otherwise known as NAEP, the nation's report card. While other urban districts were losing ground on this measure, which measures 4th and 8th grade reading and 4th and 8th grade math, CMSD saw gains. Even while Ohio and other states saw decreases in their NAEP scores, and as the United States as a whole saw declines in these scores, CMSD saw some of the largest performance increases in the nation. Now, it's true it is true that we have a long way to go, but these results are particularly important when you consider that prior to the Cleveland Plan, CMSD's results had steadily declined over the prior 2 decades. In our high schools, we've seen the most visible evidence of progress yet. Our 4-year graduation rate, just 52.2% when we began drafting the Cleveland Plan, has increased to a district record high of 66.1% this year. And when our report card is released tomorrow, we expect to see another district record high as well. This 14% or more gain means that hundreds more students have graduated from the CMSD in the last 4 years. And even as we're graduating more students, we're also seeing that these students are more ready for colleges and careers. The Higher Education Compact reports that college remediation rates for CMSD students declined by 10% in the last year alone, and that passage rates for students who do need remediation increased by 15%. Both Tri-C and Cleveland State University report that college persistence rates, the rates at which first-year students return for a second year of college, have increased dramatically for CMSD students and are closing in on the averages of those institutions. First-year persistence rates are one of the best indicators of college completion available, so this is exceedingly good news for our city. Others are noting progress as well. In the Cleveland Transformation Alliance report, which was released just this Monday, the Alliance cites the progress we've made on both measures of school performance and on implementation of the Cleveland Plan as promising, with school performance data having trended mostly upward. Additionally, the independent research group Innovation Ohio recently called the Cleveland Plan an emerging path to improvement. Make no mistake, it says, there has been progress. For the first time in decades, enrollment in CMSD has increased. Graduation rates have also increased. Disciplinary actions have decreased, and proficiency test scores have improved relative to other large urban school districts. Both reports agree, and I do as well, that there is much more work to be done. Innovation Ohio aptly points out that, quote, while the Cleveland Plan appears to have created some improvement opportunities for students, the progress has been slow and non-uniform. Some schools have seen improvement, others have seen slippage. But all are cultivating new school cultures and environments that could take as much as a generation to result in the kinds of improvements everyone wants. Similarly, the Transformation Alliance report points out that improvement has been slow and incremental, with many schools still struggling to meet ever-increasing state and national standards of quality. And yet, despite their acknowledgement of the real challenges we face, both groups advocate for staying the course. The Transformation Alliance report states the Cleveland Plan, supported by the 2012 levy approved by Cleveland voters, has provided a vision and resources for both CMSD and participating charter schools to begin the difficult long-term work of reinventing our city's public education system. The Alliance continues with a call to all stakeholders to support and pass Issue 108. So even there we've progressed. Issue 108, the district's no tax increase levy renewal, on the ballot in November, so that we can sustain and accelerate our progress. Innovation Ohio similarly acknowledges while there's still a long way to go, success is within reach. In addition to calling upon voters to renew the levy in November, its report calls upon stakeholders to stay committed to the Cleveland Plan for good reason. And again, I quote, "One of the greatest failings of our country's education reform efforts has been that no one ever stays with them for long. Something works for a couple of years, funding dries up, and we move on to the next thing." There have been several different Cleveland plans, all of which had some merit to them. Many of the changes will take years to see academic results. The community can't give up too quickly. There are cultural changes happening at many schools. Some may adopt them quicker than others, but fixating on test scores does an injustice to the truly transformational things that are happening in many different Cleveland buildings. Those of you who know me personally might guess, I prefer to think of our progress to date in terms of how it affects the life of children. Take a moment and think back to 2012. For 16 years, from 1996 to 2012, the district in our city had failed to make an investment in its children. 16 years is more than the entire school-age life of a child from kindergarten through graduation. And the results of that failed investment in Cleveland's children were predictable. Cleveland has now invested for 4 years, from 2012 through 2016, which is approximately 1/3 of the school-age life of a child. And as predicted, we've seen initial results in early childhood, third grade reading, middle school scores, and senior year. Now imagine for a moment what we'll see 2/3 of the way through that child's school-age journey in 2020, or what we'll see at the conclusion of that journey in 2024, even as we begin that journey for our newer students coming soon. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. On November 8th, just 6 weeks away, We will ask voters to renew their commitment to Cleveland's children for another 4 years by passing Issue 108, our no tax increase renewal levy, enabling us to stay the course on the Cleveland plan for the second third of their journey for the next 4 years. As the author of our passage concluded, while this plan has not accomplished all that can be desired, it has worked so successfully that there's no thought in any responsible quarter of abandoning it or relinquishing any of its essential features. His Cleveland Plan review ends by saying, "It must be remembered, however, that there is no legal enactment, no plan of government that can be so wisely and skillfully devised as to lessen in the slightest degree the responsibilities of those who are charged with its execution. Indeed, the greater concentration of authority and the more fixed and personal the responsibility which the Cleveland Plan contemplates emphasizes the necessity of more constant and earnest endeavor, of increased watchfulness and fidelity, and greater energy, zeal, and honesty if it is to be faithfully and intelligently administered." There is no law, no plan, no matter how skillfully devised, the writer says, that can lessen in the slightest degree our collective responsibility of those charged with its execution. Prior to the Cleveland Plan, CMSD had evolved into a bureaucratic, standardized, tightly controlled school system that from its central office managed everything in its schools, from staffing to scheduling, curriculum, operations, and budgets. The result? A system where no one, not a teacher, not a principal, not a central office administrator, not even the CEO, felt empowered to take the actions needed to improve outcomes for kids. No one felt accountable for results in a system that didn't allow anyone to make decisions and be responsible for them. Now, 4 years later, through a new evaluation and compensation system, we've taken a system with no accountability and held both the system through our levy and everyone in it accountable, much more accountable than any of us has seen in decades. And the writer makes it clear it is our collective responsibility that will, in the end, ensure our success. Even as we've worked hard to build an increasing sense of hope and support in the broader Cleveland community, we've struggled to build that same sense of hope and optimism among the people most important to our success, our teachers and other educators that we rely on to execute this plan well every day. We'll continue to work with all of our educators to more clearly define and assume our collective responsibility to ensure success of the Cleveland Plan. But to do so, we need to recognize and appreciate how difficult this much longer journey has been for the hardworking men and women of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. Educators who have endured and persevered through one reform plan after another, and from one superintendent to another CEO over the life of their career. It's no wonder that a veteran teacher who has devoted a lifetime to Cleveland's children would feel beleaguered by yet another promise of change. We need to remember that the education system our veteran colleagues entered 2 decades ago was a far different system with fewer challenges and demands. There were no state standards, let alone the Common Core state standards. There were no state tests, let alone state tests that counted part of your teacher evaluation. And there were no school report cards, let alone corrective action schools that aggressively addressed performance on those report cards. Teaching is profoundly different than it was when these professionals entered the field early in their career. Some of this work is not what they signed on to do when they became a teacher. Imagine what it must be like to be in a profession that promises you great stability in exchange for, frankly, relatively low wages, and then suddenly created higher levels of accountability in ways you could never have fathomed when you took the job. Well, that's exactly what happened in America's schools. And CMSD is at the front of that change. And speaking of being at the front of change, even though we saw the benefits of our early reform efforts, there are almost no fully developed models for CMSD to look to when we confront the difficult challenges that come with implementing change across the district. Therefore, when we find ourselves struggling with complex issues like differentiated compensation for teachers, or the appropriate use of student data in adult evaluations, we simply can't look to the other 611 Ohio school districts for ideas or guidance. As leaders in this work, there are almost no peers to turn to when we need to figure out solutions to our problems, or when we need to alter our course to improve on a new practice and make it better. This fall, these tensions came to a head when we faced the very real possibility of a strike by our teachers. Many people have asked me, how did things get so bad? What happened, they asked, that could drive the parties so far apart? Well, I believe at the heart of our struggles are these two very core issues. The profession of teaching has changed so dramatically, and our educators, our union members, are feeling the real emotions that come with change: anger, anxiety, uncertainty, loss, fear. And even as they're feeling these very real emotions, we, the district and the union, are left alone to find solutions to new ways of doing business that no one else has yet done. But we did. As many of you know, at literally the 21st hour, right, Mr. Kolke? At the 21st hour, we did come to an agreement that both parties believe is fair for our teachers and other educators, good for our children, and protects the essential elements of the Cleveland Plan. In truth, no one else, thank you. In truth, no one else is doing the kinds of things we're doing in Cleveland. But the district and the Cleveland Teachers Union leadership have continued to find solutions and move forward, even when it seemed there were no solutions to be found. In fact, Cleveland continues to lead the way. It's not only our teachers who are being asked to change. CMSD's central office is no longer the top-down bureaucratic operation it used to be. Instead, it's evolving into a network of service providers, positioning itself to support schools and their educators. And our principals, those we put the most responsibility on and the most trust in, are among the most burdened with leading change as well. It's our principals who are expected to leverage the new autonomies provided by the Cleveland Plan, the flexibilities in how they manage their staff, their budgets, and their resources, while also leading the complex, adaptive work of culture change. Each of us who worked together to create and implement the Cleveland Plan that brought about these changes shares responsibility to execute the plan. That means accepting shared ownership of the plan's success and continually working together to meet the challenges that naturally arise out of new ways of doing business. And it means having empathy for the hard-working educators who are implementing these critical changes every day. Indeed, as the writer so aptly stated, success of the Cleveland Plan requires a constant and earnest endeavor to succeed, increased watchfulness, fidelity to its mission, and greater zeal and honesty among all of us if it's to be faithfully and intelligently administered. So who was the writer who so fittingly captured the essence of the Cleveland Plan work? Who was it that said so eloquently, commended our progress, recognized our challenges, and emphasized the importance of staying the course? Well, it turns out the writer wasn't actually talking about us at all. In fact, the piece I've been referencing did not appear in any article you've seen in the last 4 years. This passage about the Cleveland Plan was actually written by H.Q. Sargent, the school director of the Cleveland Public Schools in 1895, when in his annual message, his own State of the Schools address, he described the Cleveland community's efforts to improve their schools, an effort they called the Cleveland Plan. So why did I use Director Sargent's critique of the Cleveland Plan? Wow, I'm glad that worked. So why did I use Director Sargent's critique of the Cleveland Plan to tell our story today? Well, Cleveland has a long history of tackling our own challenges. In fact, Mr. Sargent was tackling similar challenges more than 100 years ago. As we enter our 5th year of implementing our own Cleveland Plan, we can take some important lessons from the original. Number 1, Take decisive action to create a plan that meets the difficulties you face. Number 2, stay the course, even as you recognize its successes and its failures. And number 3, recognize that even the best plan is only as strong as its people, whose energy, zeal, and honesty must be nurtured and respected. It's hard not to wonder what people will say 100 years from now when someone dusts off a copy of this State of the Schools address, this annual message, or more likely reads a digital transcript of it. What will they say about our efforts? My hope is that they will be inspired by the vision and optimism of every one of us here today, that they will see the people of Cleveland as visionaries who believed with everything they had in the Cleveland Plan. It's my hope that future generations will be inspired by our successes, that they will be grateful to the people of Cleveland who put their hopes and dreams for their children's future in Cleveland's public schools. But that will only happen if we stay the course. So I ask you, let's build on the progress we've made the last 4 years. Let's accelerate our gains, celebrate our successes, and keep working to meet our challenges. Let's recommit ourselves today so that 100 years from now, when people read about the historic Cleveland Plan of 2012, they will know that real school reform comes from within. There are 54 days remaining on the clock on our website, or there are 1,514 days remaining on the clock on our website, and it's all up to us. Let's make history, Cleveland. Let's make history again. Thank you for joining me today for the State of the Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Would you mind introducing your young guests to our audience today?
Thank you. I intentionally didn't name them in this speech because they represent all of our kids. But I'm really pleased today to have with us senior Jacob Salvo from James Ford Rhodes High School. Jacob represents the graduation rate increases in college readiness with a 26 on his ACT. Eighth grader Adriana Liz Rodriguez, who is from Luis Munoz Marin, representing our middle grades where she passed both her English and math with proficient and advanced scores. Fourth grader Jaden Ferris from Anton Gardena School, who struggled early on third grade reading but passed both state assessments and promoted to fourth grade. Kindergarten student Mariah Yearout from R.G. Jones School, along with her teacher Bonnie Whitmer, and she was one of our pre-for-Clee school students and then went to kindergarten, passing kindergarten readiness. And my grandbaby, Jubilee Walker Williams, along with her parents, Letitia Walker and Antoine Williams. Thank you all. Congratulations. Thank you.
Today, we are enjoying the 2016 State of the Schools address featuring Cleveland Metropolitan School District CEO Eric S. Gordon. We are about to begin the audience Q&A. If you have a question, please form a line behind either of the microphone stands where our staff is standing. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, or those joining us via our radio broadcast or webcast. If you would like to tweet a question, please tweet at the City Club, and our staff will try to work you into the program. We want to remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point, and yes, they should be questions. So, may we have the first question?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anaya Emanuel. I attend Horizon Science Academy in Cleveland High School. My question is, how accurately do you think that test scores reflect a school's progress, and what might be a better indicator?
Thank you. I told the students earlier the toughest questions always come from students, so thanks for starting us off.
Thank you.
You know, I am a strong proponent of high standards for our kids and that we have to measure and know that our kids are getting there. And in that way, test scores have an important role to play. We are facing a challenge right now in that our state is recalibrating things, and so we've seen a lot of volatility. We're going to see it again tomorrow when state report cards come out. But it doesn't mean we should throw it away. We have to find some way to make sure that your teachers, my teachers, your principal, me, are getting results for you. I don't think it's the only thing we should look at. In Cleveland, we look at things called conditions for learning, which it gives us a sense of how well you're experiencing school. We look at attendance data to make sure you're attending regularly. That's an important sign. And we actually do something called a quality review, where we actually come and visually look at the experience and give feedback to our schools. But I do think that achievement scores are an important part of a bigger package of measuring your school. Thanks for your question.
Good afternoon. That was a great question. I'm going to ask a question about the new federal education law, Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, which does call for more indicators besides testing. Monday there will be a regional meeting in Cleveland at Tri-C at 6 o'clock, which talks about ESSA. And so my question is, what efforts have been made to make sure that our parents and community members understand the important role that they play in the implementation of ESSA, which is replacing No Child Left Behind?
Sure. So I'm going to take this opportunity first to say very briefly why ESSA is so important. ESSA, which replaces No Child Left Behind, will focus on the lowest 5% of performance in our state. And those schools typically are urban schools that serve minority and children in poverty. And so everyone in this room needs to care about ESSA far more than they may have cared about No Child Left Behind, which looked at every school similarly, because we are defining the next 15 years, the generation of children, based on what we will do for poor and minority children. So to that point, my board has given me wide authority to be a very large advocate around ESSA. We have a standing work team that is already engaging families to be at the event on Monday night. We've met with Greater Cleveland congregation and other faith leaders to start updating them. And you will be seeing and hearing me personally and us as a community advocating both at the national level, because there's still work to do nationally, and more importantly at the state level to ensure that ESSA allows us to do things like the Cleveland Plan as opposed to prescribing things like we're seeing in other cities in Ohio. This is a really, really important issue in front of us in the coming year. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson.
Hello, my name is Madison Reed. I am 10 years old. I'm in the 6th grade, and I attend Wade Park School. This is my question for you, Mr. Gordon. Who can you collaborate with to give the younger scholars in schools more extracurricular activities to do?
That's a great question, and good to see you, Madison. Madison, it's a really great question, and part of what we've tried to do through our community wraparound strategy, which we've got at about a quarter of our schools, is to look at all of those external support agencies that are out in our community and bring them to schools, because there's actually a lot available for kids in Cleveland, but it's not coordinated in really smart ways sometimes. So we have great partnerships with the Boys and Girls Clubs, for example. We have partnerships with the city's recreation centers. And we have partnerships with programs like America Scores, which I know you're in, and a number of other programs. And the goal really has to be to look at all of those opportunities that are already in Cleveland and get them coordinated and connected around our schools. And the notion of doing that is what we call a wraparound strategy. We've done it again in a quarter of our schools. My partners and I are actually now working on the potential of expanding it to a city-wide wraparound strategy that will bring even more resources into not only Wade Park, but all of our schools. Great question, Madison. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Liana Perez. I'm a junior at John Hay Cleveland Early College High School.
And I'm Taiyah Young. I'm also a junior at Cleveland Early College, John Hay.
Thank you for your dedication to provide us with school lunch.
But we also wanted to know, are there any plans in the future to provide us with more selections or more variety of healthy foods such as whole foods or salad bars?
Thank you.
So first, let me just say, and all the adults, you've got to back me up on this. It is a rite of passage to hate school lunch.
It is?
So you have made it. You've arrived. So the answer is yes. We are working very hard to be converting our lunch program into much more fresh choices and much salad bars at the high school as an example. We started converting our high school cafeterias into self-serve rather than the served for you. We have moved to a lot more fresh fruits and vegetable programs. You've seen some of that. We do test kitchening every summer with new menu items. I heard the pizza's cardboard. I heard that today, so we'll have to retest that one. But we really are very carefully trying to continue to broaden the breadth of choice and still meet the requirements for nutrition. One thing you may not know is that Cleveland is a leader in childhood nutrition through the Federal Nutrition Act. We've met all of the requirements of that act, even though most school districts have not yet done so. So the balance we have to do is, when we get pizza at home, it's on that nice white dough. When you get pizza at school, it is on that whole grain dough so that you're healthy. So yes, we're trying to do it, but remember, when you graduate and somebody says to you about the school lunch, it is a rite of passage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chloe Bell. I'm in the 4th grade. I'm 9 years old, and I attend Wade Park School. Here's my question for you. At our school, we currently have 3 gifted teachers. Our current 7th through 8th graders aren't getting service. What is the process of trying to get them a gifted teacher?
So it's another great question. So gifted services is one of the things that we've expanded over the last 4 years with issue 107 in the Cleveland plan. But like anything else that we've done, there's still more to do. And so where we may not have even had 3 gifted teachers 2 or 3 years ago, now 3 is not enough. That says a lot about what's going on at Wade Park, too. A lot of gifted children at Wade Park. So the first thing to do is talk to Dr. Buddy, I know he's here, about how he's thinking about that in his school design plan for next year. We also know when we go through those plans, for example, this school year, Dr. Michelle Farid, who is our academic officer, actually came to me and said, we need more gifted teachers, and we put them in the budget. So what you can do specifically as a 4th grader at Wade Park is make sure that Mr. Buddy knows your expectation, and then he will make sure that Dr. Farid knows that we need more gifted teachers. That's really how it works, and that's why the Cleveland plan is about doing it at the school instead of hoping that someone downtown knows it. Great question. Thank you very much. I need an adult, something easy. Come on now.
I'm almost there.
All right.
My name is Marcus. I'm a senior at Cleveland School of the Arts. So my question for you is, I know that the Cleveland, the levy has put a lot of money into CMSD, but I want to know how this money is both directly and positively impacting all students instead of being used to expand the central office or being put into higher performing schools or, funneling the money into different organizations like supporting schools. I want to know how this supports all students.
Sure. So the first thing we've done in the last 4 years is we've completely replaced the reading curriculum, math curriculum, and now the K-8 science curriculum, and that's a direct impact on every single student in the system. We've also hired 1,000 new teachers in the last 3 years, spread across our schools all across the system. So those are 2 direct impacts that came directly out of having issue 107. We've also done a lot of investments like at School of the Arts in programming and redesigning in programs. Now, it doesn't reach every single student, but it reaches every single student in those schools like Cleveland School of the Arts. We're right now working with our funding partners on figuring out how we can make a bigger, deeper investment in the arts K through 12 for every single student. So there are a number of things going on, either already in place or being activated. The number of technology purchases we've been able to make in the last 4 years where we weren't buying any technology prior. A brand new bus fleet, which actually saved the district a lot of money and is serving every single student. There's example after example of things that you may not even notice day by day, but are actually impacting you and your peers in every school in the district. Another great question. Thank you so much. And you're right, you're there.
My name is Donald Ivory. I go to Wade Park School. I'm 12 years old and I'm in 7th grade. My question is, did anybody inspire you to be an educator? Wow.
Yes. So actually, I think what inspired me to be an educator was that I wasn't a great student and I didn't really love school. And that may surprise you because most times educators got there because they were great students and they loved school. But I actually, particularly in high school, remembered thinking I should like this more, it should be better. And so that was really kind of what motivated me. And I had great teachers, and I had hardworking teachers, but I just didn't love school. And that was my charge, is I always wanted to be a teacher, but it had to be somehow different and better. And then to become an administrator, kind of on top of that, and this is honestly the true story, in Ohio, and our teachers in here know, you have to renew your teaching license every 5 years. And I was a math teacher, and I thought, boy, I can't teach math every day and go take graduate level advanced math courses. That would be way too hard. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm not touchy-feely, so guidance counselor was straight out. There's no way I was going to be a counselor. And at the time, I didn't know about this thing called curriculum. I was just a teacher, and I didn't really know what that was. And so it turned out where I landed, but I didn't know anything about it. So I took Intro to Administration, and my professor, who was Dr. Eugene Sanders, many of you know, my predecessor here, at the end of the course, I went up and said to him, thank you for the class. And he said, what are you going to take next? And I said, oh, I'm not taking anything next. And he said, well, why not? And I said, well, because what you teach and what I see in my schools don't match. And he said, well, change it. And here I am. He dragged me through. He mentored me through to get my principal's license, and ultimately, over the course of years, I earned the opportunity to try to change it for you and for your teachers. And it all started because it wasn't good enough for me, and so it's not good enough for you either. And we've got more work to do. So thanks for your question.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name is Maya Struther. I am currently a senior attending High Tech Academy in John Hay Early College. My question for you today is, what can I do as a student to help beautify the schools so that a student can take pride in the place that they attend each year?
That's a great question. And I think that's one of the places where students have the most control and influence. I think students often think that you don't have much power, but you and some friends going to your principal and saying, we want to beautify the school, and saying what you want to do with it, is easy and it's inexpensive and it's all within your control. And I've seen students do it. I've seen students paint murals because they thought that would brighten it up. I've seen students just patrol, why don't we get trash cans here because people throw the stuff on the ground because we don't have trash cans. Really simple fixes. I've seen students take it way beyond that and come to school administrators with a map of the school and say, this part of the school is where bad things happen, and this is why the good kids won't go to this part of the school. And that changes the culture when the administrator can say, oh, I didn't know that, I'll go fix that, right? So I think it's about getting you and some of your friends together and talking about what you dream for your school and taking it to your teachers and your faculty and your principal and challenging them to help you to enable your dream. And I bet they'll accept the challenge. All right? Let me know what you do. I want to see it. I'll come over. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Delon Hendricks. I go to Wade Park. I'm 12 years old, and I'm in the 7th grade. And my question is, what are your 3 biggest achievements of your career?
Wow. The 3 biggest achievements of my career. Boy, I don't know. I don't think of it in that kind of terms. I feel like in my own small way, because I'm perfectly clear that I'm one person out of 7,500 helping you and helping your peers. I feel like I've contributed. I feel like it matters that I work here in Cleveland for you and for your teachers. That to me is a big achievement. And it's why I'm in urban education. I actually at one point had left urban education and I came back. And I came back because I wanted to know that when I got home at the end of the night, what I had done that day really mattered. And I feel like that's true, and I feel like that's an accomplishment. And that doesn't probably answer your question exactly, but that's an accomplishment to me. That this room has 1,000 people in it that are here to make sure that we're staying focused on you. There are not many cities in the country where everybody in the community is staying focused on you. And I feel like I've contributed to that in some way. I didn't do it, lots of people did it, but I feel like I helped. That's where I find my accomplishment, is when I feel like at the end of the day, because of efforts that I made, things are a little bit better, and that they're going to keep getting a little bit better if I keep making those efforts. So that's a challenging question. I'm going to have to try to come back with 3 things, but for me it is that. It's about how I keep helping every day. All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much.
Today at the City Club, we've been enjoying the 2016 State of the Schools Address featuring the Cleveland Metropolitan School District CEO, Eric S. Gordon. Mr. Gordon appears as part of the annual Bernice Kerrigan Smith Forum on Education, made possible by a generous gift from the members of her family in honor of her distinguished teaching career. Several of them are here today, and we are grateful for their support. Today's address is sponsored by PNC with additional support from Albert and Audrey Ratner and Advanced Partnership. We thank all of you for our support and partnership. Additionally, we welcome guests at tables sponsored by many corporations, nonprofits, and community organizations. Again, we'd like to thank Eric S. Gordon today, and our forum today is officially adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Cleveland State University, Robert Conrad, and the Payne Fund.